Morning, everybody. This is Saturday Morning with George and Phil. 22 minutes to help you become the best version of yourself, whether you found yourself out of shape, struggling in a dead-end job, or job transition. We are your hosts, George Murray and Phil Connor, to help you move from where you are today to where you want to be tomorrow. We're glad you could meet us early this Saturday morning. We do encourage your questions in the chat, and we'll try to answer as many as time allows. But George, it's episode 20, and we're talking about creating your own business today. Good morning.
Hey, good morning, Phil. How are you? Did you think that we'd actually get this far? Episode 20.
I think it's like we talked about an episode or two ago, consistency, just every month, first and third Saturday. And it's been great to see how well received it's been by everybody. But definitely enjoying the conversations we have. And I think today we've got a really great topic for people that might be considering a non-traditional path of just working in a corporate job for a long time, maybe breaking out and doing something on their own.
Absolutely. Even if they just want to do a side business, because as we've realized in career transition, you just can't rely on one source of income. You could be potentially a couple of weeks away from, the unemployment line and a whole different type of environment. So question, Phil. Have you ever thought about owning your own business?
Yeah, I think anybody that does, anybody that's got a passion for always getting better and driving is going to think about that. I don't know that I've ever gotten it across the finish line. I've had those ideas. I have a little bit, like you described, of a side hustle that I started a little while ago, but for the most part, that's not really a revenue generator. I tend to speak at nonprofits or youth groups. How about yourself? What would it look like for you, do you think, if you started your own business?
Yeah, before we get into that, I do want to turn around and recognize our sponsors all this month, Thrivent. Thrivent believes money is a tool and not a goal. Driven by a higher purpose at their core, they commit to providing financial advice, investments, insurance, banking, and generosity programs to help those at the most all they've been given. And so this week, this month they're talking about creating contacting your creditors, which is extremely difficult in career transition. They ain't got no money. And requesting fee flexibility and reduction. So the folks at Thrivent, especially Skip Nelson, has been helping people in career transition for 10 years. All you guys got to do, free. I mean, where is free anymore, right? Free. Skip Nelson is having the ability to give you a 1-hour free consultation to currently really assess where you're at, and more importantly, where you want to be. Kind of like what we're talking about right here. And all you've got to do is take your phone and scan over that little indicator down in the right-hand corner.
Well, something else that's for free every first and third Saturday of the month, George, is joining George and Phil for coffee. And we thank you, folks, at Thrivent. But getting back to the topic of today, building your own business. George, you have a long history of success in the manufacturing industry, operations specifically. Hypothetically, what business, if you were to create your own, do you think it would be?
Yeah, I think, you have to go with what you know. For me, it would have to be in manufacturing, building some sort of widget. I've loved manufacturing. I kind of fell in it, really fell into it right out of the military and just kind of grew up into it. And kind of like the military, there's a lot of obstacles, challenges, but there's also a lot of rewards. So it definitely would have to be in some kind of manufacturing space. What about you?
Yeah, I think, as I alluded to before, I think it needs to be something that we're passionate about. I love manufacturing as well, and have worked for manufacturers most of my career. I think my wheelhouse, though, is helping people solve problems. So whatever venture that I would start, it would need to be about helping people solve the problems, perhaps in an innovative way. No matter what business we may in, the customer always looking for faster, better, for less. So it's got to be something that's different, but it's also got to be something that we're passionate about, because otherwise the grind of building a business isn't going to be as rewarding unless you're passionate. I think in several episodes ago, I talked about the personal combustion triangle. You know, everybody knows the combustion triangle. You need to have heat, fuel, and drawing a blank on. You need three things: air, air, heat, and fuel. And the personal combustion triangle for me is instead of air, it's consistency. You know, we talked about that an episode or two ago. Instead of heat, it's passion, and instead of fuel, it's skills. And if we consistently, passionately develop our skills, which is what you have to do if you're building a business, then you can't hide from success. And I truly believe that. You mentioned manufacturing, but I almost believe you would thrive. You personally, George, would thrive anywhere that you could improve a process or lead a team that improves processes. Because I've seen in the time that we've been together, you know, that's really your core. And you've done that with your book, Hired. We'll talk about it later a little bit. But if you haven't read this, if you know somebody who needs to get hired, they need to buy Hired.
Hey, well, thank you, Phil. You know, but I'll give some more thought on that, you know, but I like what you say about passion. And today we have a passionate guest joining us with a bit on this subject very well. So I want to welcome Eric Thurwanger to our group here. Eric is basically the founder of Think Great. So, hey, welcome aboard, Eric. Why don't you introduce yourself?
Hey, thanks, gents, for having me on. I've been looking forward to this for a long time. You guys are awesome, and I love your show. And I'm glad you made it to 20. Hopefully, I don't kill it for you, and nobody wants to tune in afterwards. Yeah, it's great to be here. I am the founder of Think Great. We're a coaching company. I focus on leadership development, strategic planning, sales training, communication. I have written books like you, George. I'm an author. And I have the blessed life to go in and work with teams on the concepts that I've written books on. It's absolutely amazing. And I do keynote speeches and seminars.
Welcome to the show, Eric. And I know you to be a former, well, let me rephrase. There's no former Marine, but thank you for your service. I've also watched many of your podcasts over the past couple of years. And well, I've always been drawn to your enthusiasm, your energy. Could you share a little bit with our viewers maybe what you do to keep that energy level high? Why is your energy so elevated?
You know, you guys were talking earlier about passion, and I feel that's a big part of what I do. I go in and I'm very passionate to help people. In fact, our tagline for our company is transforming people and magnifying results. And I get excited about that. The thing that really gets me most energized is hearing the impact that we made. And that could be whether I was in just doing a training session with a team of leaders or doing a full keynote speech, or we even kicked off a leadership workshop, a 12-month program just this week. And the following day, we had a gentleman email us and say, I was able to apply things from the first class into a meeting when at certain times he was at a loss for words to say. And so that's a big factor in my enthusiasm, is I love helping people. And right now, you know, we're in this transition phase out of the pandemic. So people need to have a little bit of a different approach on how to navigate these times. And I consider myself an unfortunate expert in chaos. I've experienced chaos a lot in my life. And now I get to go in and help shine the light on that pathway for greatness for people. And that gets me excited every single day, Phil.
Hey, Eric, you know, today is about building the business. What do you know? When did you know you wanted to own your own business and leave the security of working for someone else? Because well, it's like jumping out of a plane, right?
Yeah. You know, I never really had the desire to own my own company. I was in the Marine Corps, and then I went into the film industry, and I was very happy there. But I think life experiences, you know, as they grow in you, sometimes you have the desire or the passion to share them. And I started to understand that I had some great goal setting techniques that I learned in the Marine Corps or developed during that time period. I also developed some business building skills as the VP of a media company. But I've also been my wife's caregiver through multiple battles of different cancers, her recovery from cardiac arrest. She'd actually died for 15 minutes and came back. And so I would say that I had the idea in 2009 to start my own company, and I was the VP of a media company. So life was great. And I just wrote 2 words on a napkin, think great. I didn't know how I was going to help people to think great. I just knew that people needed to think great. And so those words stuck out to me, and I started to build a company around that. The desire to have a company wasn't as much as the passion to help people. And so really being able to plug into that passion every day caused me to I form ideas around how to do it, because that's what people asked at first. How are you going to do that? And I didn't know at first. I knew there was something that was driving me and just causing this internal fire in me. But over time, I started to develop how to package that up and deliver my passion to people. And so I would say about 2009, then we actually kicked off the company about 2010, and I started writing books and putting it all together.
Well, there's no doubt you've been successful, Eric, and you have helped lots of people think great. For the viewers that are watching that might see the idea of starting a business as just this huge, daunting effort, what advice would you give to folks watching today that if they were exploring the idea of starting their own business?
So I think we have to go on the assumption that there's always competition out there. There's always somebody that probably does what you do. And I know sometimes people will say, I have no competition because I'm that good. Look, the reality is there's other leadership coaches, there's other strategic planners, and there's other sales trainers. There's other keynote speakers. So I'm not trying to act like it doesn't exist. What I've done 2 things, I think, for Think Great that really helped us out. Number 1 is I focused on what we did, because other people do that. So I wanted to make sure I packaged up what we did or presented what we did in a way that compelled people to want it. And so, because it could be a broad stroke of the brush, right? I develop leaders. Well, how do you do that? Well, I just come in. So we created packages. And I felt that once we did that, based on what we do, whether it was leading or planning or selling, if we had it packaged up, people could choose it more easily. So packaging up what you do in a way that simplifies it, but excites them is huge. And then the second thing is we've always had very strong identity at Think Great. Something I learned in the military, that identity of who you are. I believe if somebody's listening right now and wants to start a business, there's a chance that what you do could be done by somebody else, but who you are is unique to you. It's your differentiating values. So for us, we have a mission, we have a vision, we have core values, and that becomes our identity. That becomes who we are. So as a team, we can go back and we can quote mission or vision or talk about our core values. So I feel that you got to understand what you do, and so does the end user, but they also have to understand who you are. And we actually share our core values, our mission, our vision. We share our identity with clients or prospective clients. So it's not just hire me to develop your leadership team. I can also say, here's who we are. So I believe that your who is one of the strongest driving forces that you could ever tap into.
I think that's great. Your who and your why, right? And that's basically what you outlined there.
Yeah, I think that when you look at why you're doing something, so why I do it is to impact people. But when I attach my who, I become unstoppable. So in my opinion, your who is more important than your why. The why is up here, right? The why is a 9.5, but your who is a 10. And so my who are my clients. My who is my family. My who is my team. When I actually attach the names of people to whatever it is I do, then my why, my what, my how all become magnified. So for me, if I attach my family to my goals, nobody can stop me. Even when I started a foundation, which was for military spouses, which I had no idea how to start a foundation, by the way, right? I just had an idea. I'm like, here's what I want to do. But I was passionate about it. And now we have a full-fledged foundation with a board, and we award scholarships to military and veteran spouses. It was really attaching my who. I knew their names of these spouses that we wanted to help. So, I would say there's so many ways that you can build your business and make it stronger, but, make it simple on what you offer and be very clear about who you are and who you impact.
That's awesome.
That's actually a great point. And the next question, ties right into what you stated. You have a great idea, but what are the initial steps? Where do I go? What do I do? Talk about when you made that decision and you had that great idea. What are the initial steps that you really need to focus on?
Well, there's a lot of formalities of starting your business. So, you've got the legal side of it that you have to start up. And we just went to people far smarter than us. So we found people who had already done it, and we talked to them about it. So it collapsed timeframes. I'm not a big fan of doing all the administrative side of things, but there are people that do them and they do them well. So starting our business, getting things trademarked, or even publishing books, just understand that everything that you're going to do or about to do in your business has probably been done by somebody, and there's somebody that specializes in it. And investing in the right team extensions is very important. Even for us, when we started a foundation, honestly, I've worked I've spoke at foundations. I've participated, like the American Cancer Society. We used to volunteer all the time for that and do the Relay for Life. So I'm aware of them. But when it came time to say, all right, we need a 501c3, I was like, oh, I don't know how to do that. But we found an amazing attorney here locally in the Twin Cities, and she did it all for us. And so it allowed me to continue to focus more on the purpose, the passion of what I was doing. I just surrounded myself with people who just were far smarter and better at me at starting businesses up. I think the number one thing you can do that you can control is to map out what we call flight levels. If your business is like an aircraft, it's not designed to stay on the ground. It's designed to soar into the heavens. It's designed to elevate. And so you really have to identify in the next 90 days, 1 year, 3 year, 5 years, what goals you want to hit, what flight levels do you want to reach, and become very goal oriented. We just set our next flight plan session with our team to discuss goals. Here we are going into Q4. This is the perfect time, if you're going to be starting a business, to start thinking about those goals for the future, because those help to keep you focused and not stuck in the present. You set a goal in the present, you accomplish it in the future. So goal setting is very critical, especially if you have a startup business.
It's a great visual with the flight, because I think so many of us, we jump into our car and we just drive, but pilots can't do that. Pilots have to plan if they want to get from destination to destination B, and it involves a whole lot of adjustments as you travel. What was the greatest learning experience?
Elevate. So I was an air traffic controller in the Marine Corps, and so I look at everything from an aviation perspective. And so to your point, Phil, that visual, people like the thought of elevating, taking off. And so as business leaders, we have to give people a language that they want to speak. And writing that book was very helpful for me, even as a business owner, because we eat our own food here. We do flight plans for our business aircraft. So we love that too. And then we have clients that you'll see them do this. It's time to take off. It's just awesome.
That's excellent. And the pilots always have to make constant adjustments as they're flying as well, right? I mean, because there's things that they run into that they don't expect, environmental conditions they need to adapt to. What was the greatest learning experience through the whole process of creating the business and getting it to take off? What would you have done differently in your business? Maybe example you would have done sooner or done better than what you had actually did.
I think that's a great question, because here I am, I'm a coach for businesses. So I've learned through default to be more mapped out for the future. In other words, think further out, because I've done revisions to my books. So over the years, I've written 7 books, and we've revised some of them so that they connected better. If I had had the vision, of how they would connect, I would have collapsed time frames. So you can create some of your own redundancies, but there's a learning curve. But I would say don't underestimate that 5-year goal, and to start to think about what your company looks like in 5 years, or what it should look like in 5 years. Because if you're going to build something that's going to look a certain way in 5 years, there's steps that you can take right now. And so even though I'm a big fan of vision and these longer range flight levels, 5 years or even 3 years out, initially, I probably didn't set as many as I could have, and that would have helped us out more. Just having more clarity on the future.
That's great. Thank you.
Hey, Eric. Yeah, Eric.
Yes,
I
sir.
love your earlier comment about talking about going to subject matter experts who've already kind of gone down that road.
Yeah.
You've written 7 books. I've written 1, and I was struggling. I actually reached out to you and said, hey, help me navigate this, because you've done it very successfully. Even though it looks successful on the outside, there's a lot of kind of detours, et cetera.
Yeah.
Tell us about the 7 books and just, high level, what their overall view is.
So I started off with one book. It was called Think Great. And that was the very first one I wrote. And when people were reading it, you know, it was kind of like the director's cut. It was just way too much info. It's like I didn't edit anything out. I just gave them all. It was huge. But the feedback that we got was, could I hear more about goal setting? Or I'd like to hear more about leadership, or I want to hear more about sales, or more about your story, or whatever. And so from those comments, I thought, well, maybe I have a series. And so I started to break up the individual components of that book on how to think great about goals or leadership or sales. And I started to write them. And the first one we released was the goal formula. And it just tells people how to stay focused on their goals through tough times, because goal setting was very huge for me as a caregiver with a wife who had cancer, to keep her focused on the future, right? Keep her positive, keep her spirits high, even when she had chemotherapy or radiation going on. When you set or write a book about goals, people start asking you other questions, and they would start to ask about sales goals. So our second book became a sales book. And then I wrote the strategic planning book. I even wrote a weight loss book. So that's maybe a topic for a whole nother coffee session. But then the fourth or fifth book was the leadership connection. And so we believe there's three pillars of business greatness. And everybody listening right now, whether you work in a business, own a business, or going to start a business, you have ideas of how your business can be greater. And there's a level of greatness. And that level of greatness is supported by three pillars: leading, planning, and selling. And so we have to constantly focus on strengthening those three pillars. So we have a book called The Leadership Connection. We have a book called Elevate for strategic planning. And then we have a book on sales called Dynamic Sales Combustion. And we have programs, and we go in and help strengthen those pillars, because what I found is a lot of people will answer the question, can your business be greater? They say yes. When I say how, they tell me. And it could be increasing market share or morale or whatever the case is. Here's what would make us greater. But their pillars aren't strong enough to hold that up. And eventually it tips and wobbles and collapses. And then they're back to square one. And as a leader or a business owner, they may set a new goal, and then people go, here we go again. And they don't believe they're actually going to hit it. So we position businesses to stay on track for success, but we get right into building and strengthening their ability to lead, plan, and sell. So those are really our core three books on those three disciplines. And then I wrote a book during the pandemic called The Communication Movement. We teach people how to communicate in a way that unifies, because I believe communication is very, all forms of it, words, speeches, gestures, actions, very magnetic. Our communication is magnetic. It either attracts people or it repels people. And 16 months of social distancing and stay away from each other, we put that book to the top of the pile and said, let's bring people back together with our communication. So that's kind of the high level on some of the books.
No, that's awesome. Hey, one last question, Eric. We know you're busy. Our viewers are too, ready to get started on their weekend and preparing for the great weekend.
Yeah.
If you could be doing any one thing other than what you're doing today, what would it be?
I would probably do more outdoor activities, which is great to say right before we go into these colder months, right? I do appreciate getting out and going fishing, or just being at a cabin and hanging out with friends and family. So I would probably like to do a lot more of that.
Well, I spent a lot of years in the fireplace industry. So this time of year, we love when it starts to get a little chilly out and we can gather around the fireplace and, like you said,
right,
communicate and connect.
Yeah, absolutely.
In full circle, your books either actually can help you create your own business model, or in your example, they can actually enhance your business model.
I like that. Yeah. Making enhancements, not changes. Absolutely.
Agreed. Well, hey,
Thanks.
Eric, it's been a pleasure. And, I'm always excited. I always leave the room all the time that you speak. I kind of just can go out there and crush the day. So anybody who is really looking for a change in leadership, change in their business in the positive way, I strongly suggest reaching out to Eric.
Yeah, we'd love to talk. And thank you guys for having me on today. I love your show. And I know that we made an impact today in some people. I can feel it.
Thank you so much.
And they can reach out.
Absolutely. Happy to talk to anybody about levels of greatness that they would love to achieve.
Thanks again.
Have a great weekend. Thanks again, Eric.
Thanks, you too. Bye-bye.
George, our 20th episode. I think this may have been my favorite. What a great conversation. A topic that can apply to so many of our viewers, whether they're thinking about a side hustle, a full-time gig, or even just something they might want to do in retirement. Eric shared some great insight. That was fantastic.
No, I agree. I've always been inspired him. I have met Eric, back in 2016, my first career transition, and he was just inspiring at only filling the room at like 40, 50 people. And fast forward, just before the pandemic, I saw him the last time, and he had like 350 people in that room, and everybody was glued to their feet. So again, I want to thank Eric for taking the time out of his busy schedule to give us some insight. There's the 3 areas you can contact Eric, and you won't be disappointed. If you're struggling in your business, you need to turn around and take your sales to the next level. You need to inspire and engage your workforce. Eric is the guy.
Incredibly generous with his time, and we thank him again for joining us this morning. George, you had a group you wanted to share with.
Yeah, just briefly, we've got another sponsor, and I'm really passionate about these guys because I've been on the board for a couple of years, the Soldiers Angels, hence, like, for example, Eric and I, we're so passionate about helping veterans and even people that are currently in the military, whether they're needing help in transition, et cetera. And their mission here at Soldiers Angels is to provide aid, comfort, and resources to military veterans and their families. So really thank those guys. Hey, what are we doing on our next show?
Well, and if you go back just one slide, George, I want to touch on that too, because I think that a lot of people with soldiers, I think it's important for us to realize the soldiers go where they're told to go, and we need to support them and support their families. If we don't like the engagement that the soldiers are off fighting, we need to address that with the politicians and our political leaders. But the soldiers go and they do what they do very, very well, sacrificing their time at home, their time with their families. And the work that Soldiers Angels do is just one of many groups out there that help our veterans. And it's a great way to show your support to the people that serve our country.
Absolutely. Donations are always encouraged for those, as well as, you heard today with Eric's nonprofit organization too. So again, what are we doing next? What was it? October 2nd.
Yeah, we're going to go into the last quarter of the year with a great topic. If you're in transition, it's LinkedIn profiles. George, you and I have talked about this in different ways. You covered a little bit in your book, but I'm excited to talk about this because this is an area that a lot of people, I think myself included, have spent a lot of time neglecting. Maybe you don't think social media is something that you need to be engaged in. And I will be candid, a few years ago, I actually was thinking about just unplugging from LinkedIn. And before you do that, if you're thinking about doing that yourself, I encourage you to watch our show on October 2nd. I think it might give you a completely different perspective on how you can leverage LinkedIn to help you in your career and help build your network.
And you know what? You just never know who will drop by. I'm really encouraged because I think you and I kind of know that there is going to be a LinkedIn expert and master that's going to join us. So please make sure that you guys are out there helping share this information. If you like the show today, you can hit share. If you want to see previous shows, you can always go to my profile. I think the last 5 or 6 were actually on YouTube now and actually all on some Facebook. So there's always an opportunity to catch up on a past show.
And then in closing, we definitely want to remind you that if you know somebody in transition, if you know somebody that needs to get hired, this is the book to get. You Need to Get Hired by George Murray, our very own George. It includes the proven strategy and effective steps to get you that next great career. And again, don't take our word for it. If you look on Amazon, some of these other sites listed on your screen, you'll see over 100 people, nearly 100 people have put on their own reviews of their own experience. And it's helped so many people, and it can help you as well.
Those 7 books that Eric has out there, personally, professionally, are able to help you as well. So I definitely would go on Amazon and research Eric Thurwinger. Great guy. Well, Phil, hey, another great one. And I'm looking forward to October 2nd. Have a great weekend, all.
Get better. We'll see you forward.